breaking news right now. A judge says there is probable cause to hold the Trump administration in contempt. This is in regards to the case of deporting Venezuelan migrants, despite that judge's order in his court to turn the plane around. CNN chief legal correspondent Paula Reed joins me now. Paula, what exactly is the judge saying?
Look, Dana, this is huge. We've been waiting for this opinion. Now, the judge here is still deciding punishment and the next steps. He is giving the Justice Department a chance to weigh in here. But this case, this question has, as you know, become a political flashpoint. President Trump has repeatedly attacked this judge, James Boasberg, even calling for him to be impeached. Now, much of this started last month on March 15th. The president had invoked the Alien Enemies Act to facilitate deportations of Venezuelan migrants.
Hello, buddies. Adam is here. So this is happening right now. A federal judge, pushed to his absolute limit, just issued a ruling that shifts the balance of power in ways that will echo far beyond this presidency. The ground just moved. Judge James Boasberg has been patient. For months, he has watched the administration defy his orders.
The judge says, as this opinion will detail, the court ultimately determines that the government's actions on that day demonstrate a willful disregard for its order, sufficient for the court to conclude that probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt. The court does not reach such a conclusion lightly or hastily. Indeed, it has given defendants ample opportunity to rectify or explain their actions. None of their responses has been satisfactory. The Constitution does not tolerate willful disobedience of judicial orders, especially by officials of a coordinate branch who have sworn an oath to uphold it.
For months, he has seen lawyers stand before him and say things that he knew weren't true. For months, he has issued rulings, issued warnings, issued threats, all of which were met with the same response: nothing, defiance, stonewalling. The quiet but unmistakable message from the White House that his authority meant nothing. And on this day, in that courtroom, with the weight of the Constitution on his shoulders and the patience of a saint finally exhausted.
All right, we turn now to the Trump administration standoff with a federal judge. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg now saying that the government appears to have acted in bad faith. This comes after the hearing wrapped just moments ago to determine whether or not the government violated his court order to stop the deportation flights, two of them with alleged members of a gang, to a mega prison in El Salvador. President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act last month. It's a wartime authority used to deport non-citizens with little to no due process by arguing that the Venezuelan gang is a, quote, hybrid criminal state that he says is invading the country. Joining me for more is ABC News Justice reporter Alex Mallon and ABC News senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. And Alex, the hearing just wrapped here. What are your main takeaways?
I mean, it was really a fascinating hearing, Kana. I mean, Judge Boasberg really laid it on the government. It really seemed like he is leaning towards initiating contempt proceedings. Now, what that's going to look like, we don't know. But he basically tried to drill down the timeline of the government and that March 15th, that Saturday hearing where he initiated this verbal order to the government to say if there are currently any planes in the air with migrants that are being deported under the Alien Enemies Act, you need to turn those around.
Judge Boasberg did something that sent shockwaves through the entire system of government. He snapped. Not in the way you might imagine. There was no shouting, no theatrics, no dramatic gestures. What happened was far more terrifying for the administration than any outburst could have been. The judge looked at the lawyers standing before him, looked at the record of defiance stretching back months, looked at the pattern of obstruction that had become the administration's only consistent policy, and he spoke words that will echo through American history. I'm done. 2 words. But everyone in that courtroom understood exactly what they meant. Done with the games. Done with the lies. Done with the excuses. Done with the administration treating his courtroom like a suggestion box rather than a court of law. Done with the contempt for the judicial branch that had become the defining feature of this presidency. And then the judge made his meaning unmistakably clear. He issued contempt rulings. Immediate contempt. Not another warning, not another chance, not another opportunity for the administration to say they'll comply and then do nothing. Contempt, right now, on the record, with consequences attached. And then he went further. He said that if the administration continued to undermine his orders, continued to ignore his rulings, continued to treat the judicial branch as something that could be dismissed with a social media post or a demand for impeachment, there would be arrests, not more hearings, not more motions, not more opportunities for delay, federal marshals, handcuffs, jail cells. The courtroom erupted. People gasped. Reporters scrambled to write down exactly what they had heard. Lawyers exchanged looks of disbelief, because everyone understood what had just happened. The judicial branch had finally decided to use its ultimate weapon, and there was nothing the White House could do to stop it. This wasn't just another legal setback for Donald Trump. This was the moment where the entire architecture of his presidency, the entire strategy of defiance that had allowed him to operate above the law for so long, finally collapsed. To understand why this moment is so devastating, you have to understand who Judge Boasberg is and what he represents. This is not some obscure judge presiding over a minor case. This is the judge that Donald Trump has attacked more publicly, more personally, more viciously than almost any other member of the judiciary. Trump has demanded Boasberg's impeachment. He's called him a radical left lunatic. He's tried to humiliate him on social media, to turn his followers against him, to make him a symbol of everything Trump claims is wrong with the judicial system. And Boasberg, for months, did what judges are supposed to do. He ignored the attacks. He kept his head down. He issued rulings based on the law, not on the politics. He gave the administration chance after chance to comply, to correct course, to show some respect for the judicial process. But the administration never did. They kept defying. They kept ignoring. They kept treating Boasberg's rulings as optional, as suggestions, as obstacles to be circumvented rather than orders to be obeyed. And now Boasberg has responded, not with angry tweets or cable news appearances or demands for retribution, with the only response that matters in a courtroom: contempt, sanctions, the threat of arrest. The judge basically looked at the president, who has spent months trying to destroy him, and said, "You can attack me all you want. You can demand my impeachment. You can call me every name in the book. But in this courtroom, I am the judge. And if you don't comply with my orders, you're going to jail." That's not revenge. That's the rule of law. And for a president who has spent his entire time in office trying to convince Americans that the rule of law doesn't apply to him, it is the most devastating response possible. Now let's talk about what actually led to this moment, because this didn't happen overnight. This is the culmination of months of the administration doing exactly what they thought they could get away with, and Judge Boasberg has been documenting every single violation. The core issue involves deportation cases. The administration wanted to deport people that Boasberg's court had ruled could not be deported because they had legal protections. The judge issued orders. The administration ignored them. The judge issued more orders. The administration found workarounds. The judge warned them to stop. The administration kept doing exactly what they were doing. Then there were the subpoenas. Courts issued subpoenas demanding documents related to deportations and immigration enforcement. The administration refused to produce them. Lawyers stood before Boasberg and claimed the documents didn't exist, even though the judge knew they did. They lied under oath. They committed perjury in open court. They treated the judicial process as something to be manipulated rather than respected. And then there was the frivolous litigation. The administration filed lawsuits and appeals that had no legal merit, arguments that were clearly baseless, motions designed not to win, but to delay. Boasberg had already imposed over $1 million in sanctions against Trump for this kind of behavior. But the administration didn't stop. They kept filing. They kept wasting the court's time. They kept treating the judicial system as a toy to be played with rather than an institution to be respected. By the time Boasberg finally reached his breaking point, the administration had racked up over 96 separate violations of court orders. 96. That's not a few mistakes. That's not an administration that occasionally runs afoul of complex legal requirements. That's a systematic pattern of defiance. That's an administration that has made a deliberate decision to treat the judicial branch as an obstacle to be ignored. And Boasberg has had enough. The contempt ruling he issued is not subtle. Contempt of court is one of the most serious things a judge can find. It means you have deliberately violated a court order. It means you have deliberately disrespected the court's authority. It means you have deliberately chosen to place yourself above the law, and the consequences of contempt are severe. Fines that can be levied personally against the officials involved. Sanctions that can drain the administration's already stretched resources, and in extreme cases, jail time. Boasberg made it clear that he's prepared to go to that extreme. He said that if the administration continues to violate his orders, immediate arrest will follow. That means federal marshals showing up at the doors of administration officials. That means handcuffs. That means being brought before the judge in custody. That means jail until they agree to comply. That's the language of a judge who has run out of patience. That's the language of a judge who is no longer willing to let the administration treat his courtroom with contempt. That's the language of a judge who is prepared to use every tool at his disposal to enforce the rule of law. And here's where the timing becomes absolutely devastating for Trump. Because while Boasberg was issuing these contempt rulings, while he was threatening arrest for continued defiance, Congress was in the middle of voting on impeachment. The same day, the same hour, the same moment in history where one branch of government was deciding whether to remove the president for abuse of power, another branch was documenting that abuse of power in the most formal, most damning way possible. Think about what that means for the impeachment case. Congress now has fresh evidence from a sitting federal judge that the administration has violated court orders 96 times. They have evidence that the judge has found the administration in contempt. They have evidence that the judge is threatening arrest because the administration's defiance has become so extreme. They have a judge basically telling the country that the president's administration is operating outside the law. That's not just evidence. That's the smoking gun. That's the kind of evidence that makes an impeachment case unanswerable. Because when a federal judge says you're in contempt, when a federal judge says your defiance is so serious that arrests are necessary, there's no political spin that can make that go away. There's no media strategy that can explain it away. There's no claim of bias or witch hunt that can hide what's happening. The contempt ruling becomes a direct indictment of the president's conduct, and it comes at the exact moment Congress is deciding whether to remove him. Now let's talk about what this contempt ruling actually means for the people in Trump's administration, because that's where the real impact is going to be felt. Boasberg has made it clear that he's not just targeting the administration in the abstract. He's targeting specific people, the lawyers who have been lying under oath, the officials who have been refusing to produce documents, the people who have been implementing the strategy of defiance. They are the ones who face contempt rulings. They are the ones who face sanctions. They are the ones who face the threat of arrest. And that changes the calculation for everyone in the administration. Up until now, Trump's people have been following his orders because the consequences seemed manageable. A legal setback here, a sanction there. A bad headline that would be forgotten by next week. Nothing that threatened them personally. Nothing that made them question whether following Trump's orders was worth the risk. But now the calculus has changed. Now the consequences are jail time. Now the consequences are federal marshals showing up at their doors. Now the consequences are being held in contempt of court, which can destroy a legal career, which can lead to disbarment, which can follow you for the rest of your life. So everyone in the administration who has been involved in defying Boasberg's orders has a choice to make. Do they keep following Trump's instructions and risk going to jail? Or do they start complying with the judge's orders and hope that protects them from consequences? Some of them are going to choose to comply. Some of them are already choosing to comply, because the one thing that concentrates the mind like nothing else is the prospect of handcuffs. And once people start complying, once the strategy of unified defiance starts to crack, the whole thing collapses, because Trump can't defy court orders by himself. He needs people to do the paperwork, to sign the documents, to show up in court and lie under oath. When those people decide they'd rather not go to jail, the defiance ends. And that's what Boasberg is counting on. That's why he issued the contempt ruling. That's why he threatened arrest. He's not trying to send Trump officials to jail for the sake of it. He's trying to break the strategy of defiance by making the personal consequences too high for anyone to continue participating in it. Now let's look at the broader implications of what just happened in that courtroom. The separation of powers is one of the foundational principles of American government. 3 branches, each with its own authority, each checking the others. And for 200 years that system has worked because each branch has respected the authority of the others. The president might disagree with a judge's ruling, but the president complies. The Congress might be frustrated with the president's policies, but they use the legislative process, not defiance, to address that frustration. Trump has spent his presidency trying to overturn that understanding. He has acted as if the judicial branch has no authority over him. He has treated court orders as optional. He has attacked judges personally, demanded their impeachment, tried to delegitimize their authority. He has tried to make the presidency into something it was never meant to be, an office above the law. And Boasberg's contempt ruling is the judicial branch's answer to that. It's the moment where the courts say, with one voice, that the president is not above the law, that court orders are not optional, that the authority of the judicial branch is real and will be enforced, that if you try to place yourself above the law will eventually find you. The ruling also exposes how completely Trump's legal strategy has failed. For months, Trump has been telling his lawyers to make frivolous arguments, to file baseless motions, to delay, distract, and obstruct. And for months, judges have been warning that this strategy would eventually backfire. Now it has. Boasberg has issued contempt rulings. He's imposed sanctions. He's threatened arrest. And Trump's lawyers have no defense. They can't argue that they were just following orders. They can't claim executive privilege when they were lying under oath. They can't pretend this is all just politics when a federal judge has documented 96 violations of his orders. The legal strategy of defiance has hit a wall, and that wall is made of contempt rulings and arrest threats. Now consider what this means for Trump's ability to govern. A president can't do much if the courts have essentially declared war on his administration. Every policy he tries to implement can be challenged. Every order he gives can be blocked. Every official who tries to carry out his agenda can be held in contempt. The judicial branch has the power to grind the executive branch to a halt if it chooses to use that power, and Boasberg has just signaled that the courts are ready to use it. So what comes next? The contempt ruling is final. The sanctions are imposed. The arrest threat has been made. The administration can appeal, but appeals take time and don't change the underlying reality that Boasberg has found them in contempt. And any appeal would have to go through a judicial system that is increasingly fed up with the administration's tactics. Congress, meanwhile, is using the contempt ruling as ammunition for impeachment. The timing couldn't be worse for Trump. At the exact moment lawmakers are deciding whether to remove him for abuse of power, a federal judge is documenting that abuse of power in the most formal way possible. That's not just bad timing, that's catastrophic timing, and the people in Trump's administration are going to have to make their choices. Do they stay loyal to Trump and risk jail, or do they start complying with the courts and hope to avoid personal consequences? Some will choose loyalty, at least for now, but many will choose self-preservation. And as more people start complying, the pressure on the holdouts will increase. The end of Trump's reign, when historians write about it, will not be marked by a single event. It will be marked by a cascade of them: the impeachments, the criminal convictions, the loss of political support, the collapse of his legal defenses. But if there is a single moment that captures the essence of how it ended, it might be this one. A federal judge pushed past the breaking point by months of defiance, finally saying, "Enough. Contempt. Sanctions. Arrest." The rule of law asserting itself against a president who thought he was above it. Because in the end, that's what this is about. Not politics, not personalities, not the endless drama that has consumed American life for so many years. It's about whether the rule of law still means anything. It's about whether a president can ignore court orders with impunity. It's about whether the judicial branch has the authority and the will to enforce its decisions against the most powerful office in the country. Judge Boasberg has given his answer. He has the authority, he has the will, and he's prepared to use it. The courtroom on that day will be remembered as the place where the law finally stood up to a president who thought he could break it, where patience finally ran out, where warnings finally gave way to consequences, where a judge looked at 96 violations of his orders and said, "No more." The reign is ending. Not with a bang, necessarily, but with a contempt ruling, with a judge's gavel coming down one final time, with the words "immediate arrest" hanging in the air like a verdict on an entire presidency. Donald Trump spent years telling his supporters that the system was rigged against him, that judges were enemies, that the law was a weapon being used by his political opponents, that he was above it all, immune to consequences, protected by the office he held. But on this day, in this courtroom, the system worked exactly as it was designed to work. A judge did his job. A court enforced its orders. The law was applied equally, without fear or favor, to the most powerful administration in the country. And for the first time, it became unmistakably clear that there was nowhere left to hide, no more delays, no more legal tricks that could forestall the inevitable. The contempt ruling is the final nail. The arrest threat is the last warning. And for everyone who has been watching this drama unfold, wondering when the consequences would finally arrive, the answer is now. They've arrived. The judge has spoken. And there's nothing the president can do to stop what comes next. The reign is over. The rule of law has returned.